Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Batman Prelude to the Wedding. This is part 3 with Batgirl versus the Riddler. This is written by Tim Seeley, pencils by Mankoyu Young, inks by Jose Marzan Jr., colorist was Jordi Belair, epilogue artist Otto Schmidt, letter Dave Sharp, editor was Brittany Holzer, group editor James Rich. This was a mixed bag. So we start out with Batgirl finding a tape cassette player with a tape from the Riddler on it, and she has to set off for action and adventure. Then we have a little flashback. Okay, so there's a lesbian couple that run a floral shop. That's a little stereotypical, don't you think? It's a bit cliche and probably a little homophobic by today's standards. So she finds out that this lady's missing, and then we just jump straight back to the now, and most of the story is told through these tape cassettes that she's got, leading her through various riddles. Now, unfortunately, they don't show us how she solves the riddles. We're not part of that equation. We just hear the riddle and then she instantly solves it. So either she's a super genius who can solve every riddle without any effort whatsoever, or they just didn't want to drag it out to where we actually see how she deduces what's going on. But I think it's just because all women are geniuses in comic books now. Every time she saves somebody, she gets another riddle, and apparently there's 4 hostages. So we go around and again, each one she just magically solves it. We don't see how she plots through it. That would actually be an interesting story, and we're not allowed to do that. This is a money grab. This is not a comic. This is a shameless cash grab disguised as a comic book. Well, eventually she catches up with the Riddler somehow. I don't know. And they get in a fight, which is actually a pretty good fight scene. And he punches her several times. Like, this is not the typical one-hit quit, which is shocking to me, actually, because it was actually pretty decently done. Then she finds the 4th victim, who's some little kid with a ring, like a little ring bearer kid or whatever. And then she runs into Commissioner Gordon, who doesn't recognize her as his daughter, no matter her mannerisms, her voice, her height, etc. Nope, she's a total stranger. And then she calls Nightwing to see if he wants to have coffee. And we get an epilogue with Harley, which leads into the final part, but we've got another one to go before that they didn't bother to tell us about. The riddles could have been cool. I think that if they had actually done like a 2-part story, or just had 2 victims that she had to rescue, and we see her deducing the information and figuring out where these people were, it would have been a much better story. The fact that her dad doesn't recognize her is kind of sad and creepy at the same time. The fight scene was good, like I said. I didn't care for the art in this one very much. I thought overall it had potential, but it looks half finished. This is something I would expect from a lower end publisher that can't afford better artists. Sub Dynamite, sub IDW. Not even by their standards is this publishable art. Some of the concepts were cool, like how the victims were being held. It could have made for cool riddles, but there just wasn't enough space to go into that. If he had just done 2 people instead of 4, I think Mr. Seeley could have expanded on it and walked us through what Barbra Gordon was doing, but that would have involved better storytelling, and these are cash grabs, like I said. So I would not recommend this. Again, we've got another one where the concept is better than the execution, much like part 2, which would have made an interesting story on its own in that case too. And I think Tim Seeley's got good ideas, but either constraints or a lack of willingness to take risks is holding him back. In this case, I think that it was actually constraints to pump out a one-shot and try and grab some cash for the company. So I would not recommend this. These are just so far pretty, at best, mediocre. If you find this one for $1, it might be worth it, but I don't think so. I would just skip this one. But that's just my opinion. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing so you don't miss future reviews, and we hope to see you on the next one.